Got it. All right. Well, hi guys. Let me see. I can do this. Should be here.
Yeah, it started.
So, I know everybody here, but I'm Bruce Mattingly. I'm in Moorhead, and I just lost my slides. And I'm the program coordinator and also direct the developmental research core. Okay, are the
There we go.
slides?
Looks good. Looks good.
Okay, cool. So you've probably heard of this new program, this R16 program, got announced last April and became actually activated in May. So I talked at the last grant R15 workshop to a lot of the new people that attended that to give them an overview of this. And also presented it at the Southeast Regional virtually. So hopefully most people had become aware of this thing, but it seems to be a really another avenue for us at the PUIs for funding. And it's very similar in a lot of respects to the R15, but actually has in some cases some advantages. And so, I mean, we're going to have to, I think, in the future, in terms of making it optional, whether, you know, our grantees either go after an R15 or potentially an R16. So anyway, I've got a couple slides here just to give you kind of the background on the R15. I know you guys are familiar with it, but I want to show you the similarities of the R16 program to the R15 program. And so here we are, the R15, you know, unlike R01s, the R15 are like R01s, it supports meritorious research, and that's the primary criteria to get funded on R15. But unlike R01s and other mechanisms, it also a goal and a requirement is that you expose students to research, and it's also set up to your an important criteria is whether or not the award would strengthen the research environment at the institution. And as most of you know, in the last couple of years, they've divided the old area grants, they call them research enhancement awards now, into two types. The areas, which are for academic, undergraduate academic focus awards, and these research enhancement award, or REAPs, for health professional schools, nursing and so forth. And they have separate programs all under the R15 code now. So the characteristics, as you know, they're 3-year awards with a maximum of requested of $300,000 for the entire project. Like R01s, you can apply 3 times a year, February, June, and October. And they have a regular research strategy section limited to 12 pages. One makes them a little different. The R15s is again, critically, I mean, any institution for the most part is eligible, except it's for those institutions who have received limited amounts of NIH funding in the past. In the case of the R15, it's no more than $6 million per year from NIH of any kind of award in 4 of the last 7 years. And it requires a letter from the provost verifying that the institution is eligible. So, and again, I mentioned the other thing about it is there's 4 PARs for these researcher enhancement awards or R15s. There's 2 for the REAPs for the health professional schools and 2 for the undergraduate focused areas. And they differ on whether or not they allow clinical trials. And unfortunately, almost any human subjects work anymore is considered a clinical trial. And you can see also the different institutes support. It's not exactly all institutes support all 4 of the various PARs. Now, with the SURE Awards, or R16, but a Support for Research Excellence Award, or SURE, these were developed in the last year to replace what used to be called SCORE Awards. And I don't remember what SCORE stands for, but they had SCORE 1, 2, and 3, and they were limited to minority institutions that were a little more narrowly defined. So these SURE Awards replace that, and they're similar. Minority institutions are eligible, but now, as you see, item 3 here, they are meant to serve groups underrepresented in biomedical research, which in a sense, the R15 awards did the same thing. But in this case, they've expanded this underrepresented to upper represented groups related to socioeconomic status, as we'll see in a second. But again, if you look at the eligibility for the purpose, is develop sustained research excellence of faculty, like the area grants, that award science degrees, that receive limited NIH support, like the areas, and serve students from groups underrepresented in biomedical research. The goals, similar to area, support research of faculty, provide students with research opportunities, and enrich the research environment. I mean, in many respects, it's almost identical to the R15 grants. And I put a link here. When they first announced this program, they had a webinar last April, and it's very informative if you want to know more about the history of the program and how it came about. There's a link to a YouTube video at the bottom that you might want to consult. So that in many respects, they're similar to the R15s. Organizational eligibility. So the institutions must offer undergraduate, graduate degrees and/or biomedical sciences, like area. The limited NIH funding, in this case, it's no more than $6 million per year from NIH in the past 2 fiscal years. Now, the one difference here in the area, it's no more than $6 million of any NIH funded in the last 4 of 7. This is restricted. It's no more than $6 million of strictly NIH research project grants. So if you have center grants or other kinds of grants, they do not count toward the $6 million. Of course, all the regional and private institutions in Kentucky meet this criteria, just like for area. In addition, with regard to underrepresented groups, the institutions must enroll at least 25% of their undergraduate students must be supported by Pell Grants. And Martha looked us up when we first started talking about this, and all public institutions, well, maybe some privates, certainly KBRN supported institutions are all eligible except the University of Kentucky and Center College. Notice that these particular grants, well, I was going to say Louisville meets the criteria for Pell Grants, but does not meet the criteria, obviously, for the $6 million a year. Now, the only exception to that would be a health or medical school that has a historical mission statement that explicitly states that it was founded to educate students from nationally underrepresented groups. So, that's all, like I say, all of us are in, or center, are eligible for these grants in the state thing. Just investigator eligibility is that the PI faculty member must have a full-time tenure track or equivalent faculty appointment And it's similar to what we require for our Cabrin Awards. Interesting, there's some other aspects of these that are similar to what we require for our Cabrin Awards that I'll get into. So postdocs, part-time, adjunct, retired, emeritus, or restricted appointments are not eligible for these awards. So there's two types of awards. You see at the top, sure and sure first, and I'll go over the difference between those two in a second. So overall, again, same slide. There it is. So for the Sure First Awards, the specific eligibility for Sure First is the applicants must not have been ever a PI on an externally funded federal or non-federal grant. So it's not just NIH. If it's NSF or it's any other grant, in fact, if you were in, this is kind of, we may need to warn people, but if you had applied for like a KAS $5,000 grant and had received it, and you were the PI on it, that would make you ineligible for a Sure First Award. But I did check, and sub-projects that you get from INBRE, so our idea grants and other awards, startup awards, they do not count. You have to be the principal investigator, not a sub-awardee. So all our faculty that have had idea grants are eligible, or a startup are eligible for these awards. But you cannot have had an NSF grant or even a foundation grant or any other kind of external grant. Secondly, just like our Cabrin idea grants, interesting, for these Sure First Awards, the new faculty must identify a scientist based in the US with the expertise and extramural funding record in the proposed field of research to serve as mentor. So that's different. The R15s do not require you to have a mentor. The Sure First Award, also like our Cabrin Awards, requires that you devote at least 6 person months, 50% effort to the research project. And like our Cabrin grants and R15s, undergraduate students must participate in the execution, analysis, and reporting of the research. So again, in many respects, very similar to R15s, and also very similar to our Cabrin idea grants. One thing is that will hurt those that do human subjects work though, clinical trials are not allowed. Now, so it'll only be, pretty much eliminates most of the human subjects work. Now, the other thing about it, I don't know if I have a slide that shows this, you are eligible to apply for these regardless of what NIH institute that you would be going to, whether it's NCI or NIA or NIDA, NIMH, all institutes are eligible. What's interesting about it, this is 100% NIGMS funded project. So the other institutes are not providing any money for it, but NIH is would have funded, but they have made all institutes eligible, again, with the caveat, no clinical trials. Now, for the good news for the Sure First Awards, unlike the R15 grants, you can request up to $125,000 a year for a total of 4 years. So I'd make the total award worth $500,000. Interestingly, we've been pushing for years, and when we go to our NIH BIPC meeting to extend the R15 grants to a 4-year grant, because we've always felt that 3 years is just not enough time to get it going and be in a good position to get a renewal. So I kind of wonder, I've talked to the program officer for these, and she was very familiar with our successes with the area grants from our meetings at NIH and talking about our programs up there. We've given several talks about our programs. And I tend to think that some of the things they put into these R15, R16 grants are things that we have suggested over the past few years at our NIH idea grant meetings. But at any rate, for the SureFirst, 500,000 over 4 years. Unlike the R15 grants, though, I don't think you'll get all the money up front. You'll get, like we do for the overall INBRE grant, you will get your allotment 125,000 each year over the 4 years. Again, the Sure Rewards are meant for new investigators, and they're not renewable. And unlike the R15 grants, there's only one submission date a year. And that date is the next one. The first one was last September. The next one will be September 28th of 22, this coming September. And I've listed the PAR number down at the bottom so you can look up more of the details, or I'll give you a little bit more information about how to apply for these grants here shortly. And you guys should know to interrupt me anytime if you have a question or something. This is not formal, you don't need to wait till the end, so feel free to speak up. So
I have a question, Bruce. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah. Actually, I missed first several minutes. But here, first question is the mentor. Would that be completely independent or new researcher, or can my PhD advisor or postdoc advisor be a mentor?
I would suspect they would. I mean, I'm sure you can. The question is, which one would get you a higher priority, in terms of whether or not they would perhaps, you should be trying to develop. I mean, they want you to develop your own independently funded research program. So I think probably like K-Brand, we like to, and that's what we want you to do with our funding. So the question is, are you, will a reviewer look at it and say, he's still too attached to his postdoc mentor as opposed to establishing his own independent line of work? Now, I don't think they would eliminate that. We don't either. We allow people to use a postdoc mentor or PhD mentor if they're well suited to provide that kind of advice and they have the expertise in your field and area. But two, it's clear that you need to demonstrate, I believe, that you need to be embarking on your own independent research program. So I let Mark or Martha or others kind of chime in here what their thoughts might be about that.
I see.
I was going to ask, oh, sorry, was that you, Mark?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Janelle. I would.
Okay. I was going to ask, I will ask another question on the mentor topic. I guess I'd echo what Bruce said about maybe how some of us in the KY INBRE look at that. It is kind of nice to know that someone has identified an additional scientist to be a suitable mentor who they haven't worked for before, shows that they can make good collaborations, identify appropriate people. I mean, one may assume that you are going to use your postdoc and or graduate mentors as mentors for that purpose. So it's kind of nice to see another person, but it's not any kind of fatal flaw in my opinion. I guess my question on the mentor topic was the specifics of the role that they play in this award. And we might not know that in terms of, can you, must you, may not you include any support, financial support with them, or is it just, and how does one list them when they are preparing that application as a, certainly not as a co-PI, but some sort of, what do they call it? Significant other contributor or something like that. I don't know the details of how they expect that person to be treated.
Yeah. Okay, I want, yeah, the mentor, I'll come back to your question in a second, Janelle.
Mhm.
First of all, I think the maybe critical, when it may be nice to have an external person, but two things I think are critical. One, you could show from their Vita and support letter that they have a track record and the expertise that's kind of important and critical to what you're doing. It's not just tangentially related, but they show some expertise there. I think it'd be important too, that they have a track record of NIH funding. That would be really important there. I think those two things would help you. Now, with regard to, I believe that the mentor here would be listed as like senior or key personnel. And because you definitely need a bio sketch for that person. And I think it would be okay in this case to provide some financial support through this mechanism. We could definitely, given the amount of money, I think it would be, certainly won't be 20, 30, 40% effort, but like 5% effort or some small effort may actually look better, because then would suggest this person is fully committed to the project. And I will get to a little later in this, you got to provide, I think there's going to be more follow-up on this. We expect for ID awards, we want there to be a good relationship with the mentor and people actually use their mentor. In some cases, we've seen people really haven't used their mentor, or their mentor hadn't been available. I think it's going to be important that this person is used, and we'll see that there actually requires a statement to show how the mentor will be used and what expertise they'll be bringing and how that you will consult with that person. But I think I've got a slide a little later that talks about that. But again, overall, I don't think that would, if your PhD mentor or postdoc mentor has the necessary expertise and track record of NIH funding, and you can demonstrate that you're establishing your own independent program, I don't think we'd say, no, this is not allowed. But certainly we could talk to the program officer people and double check with them to make sure. Okay.
I have.
Yeah, that's probably the best advice, is just, talk to the contact to see if they think that's a good mentor.
She's really nice and really helpful.
I have another question, if you don't mind.
Nope.
PI must devote at least 6 per month. It's not easy for me to think how that would be. So on top of teaching every semester. So can I simply assume that in addition to my teaching, if I have R16 this grant, probably no other grants I may be involved in. I think 6 months is quite a lot. Is it okay to assume that way?
So let's see, but you had a Cambrian Idea grant, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cambrian Idea grant required 6 months. Well, actually 4.5 for the academic year, but most people had because remember that's 6 months out of 12. So if you devoted 4 and a half months. If you devoted 2 months in the summer, then you would need to devote 4 months in the academic year. So it should be pretty similar to what you're doing for the Cambrian Idea
I
Award.
see, I see, I see, I see.
Now, but again, have you not had any other external support as a PI?
Oh, are you asking?
Yeah, of any other kind of grant?
No, no, no.
Okay.
Cambrian Idea is the only one.
Okay, great, great. So yeah, so it's 6 out of 12 months for the one. But I think, I mean, technically you could put 3 months of summer salary in the summer and then be three months out of 9 in the academic year. So, but I'm assuming that you had some reduction in teaching load for the IDEA grant.
Right.
So I'm not as familiar about, what the normal load is at U of L. I mean, what if you don't have a grant, you're still probably considered how much effort on research a year? 20%, 25 or something like that without a grant
Academic year?
per academic year or year?
Summer, for example, for my recent R15, I think I put 30% of summer, 3 months, and academic year, much, much lower. Some people, I think, just put 1% or something.
So you were going to begin an R15, you were going to continue teaching your normal class load?
I have to. So department doesn't completely allow me to drop all the courses, obviously. So there should be minimum amount of teaching that I needed to do. So up until now, 6 person month was okay. But overall, I think my teaching could be increased little by little. So if that is the case, then probably I'll have to talk to the department, and the department might not be able to easily accommodate this requirement because they have to find alternative faculties. So I was wondering if this condition, 6 months, could be a little bit modified. Yeah, I was just
So
curious.
is your teaching considered 100% of your time during the academic year?
100%?
Well, I mean, we're not talking 6 months without any teaching. We're saying that, 50% of your time is on teaching, 50% on research or whatever.
Right, 50%.
So I just didn't know how many courses you were teaching, if that's really 100% of your time.
Okay, so sorry, I think I misunderstood. That depends on my real time spending on teaching, or according to my work plan is roughly 50% of my time goes to teaching.
Yeah, if your work assignment is 50% teaching and 50% research, I mean, you have to have service in there, so you might.
Right.
If 50% of, if your work assignment is 50% teaching and you got this grant, then I think you should go to your chair and say, I can't do any service or something like that.
Right. And then, well, the other thing to remember here, I mean, particularly with these being 125,000, I know, and most people do it with R15 grants that are only 100, is partially buy out that time, use grant money to buy a course or two. So in other words, your chair would get money back to try to hire somebody or whatever. It wouldn't necessarily have to be a cost share for that. So for the Cambrian grants, we won't pay for cost share for buyout, but these grants will pay partially to buy out some of your coursework. So I don't know, maybe you and Martha can chat about, because Martha's got years of experience working with chairs to get what she wants. So, but there should be a way to do it. I would think so. I really think it's important to get that 6-person months to minimize your teaching. But again, it's like right now, I think for K-Brand, again, we require 4.5 months during the academic year. And usually most people do at least 2 months in the summer. So that would, most K-Brand idea grants are over the 6-month effort.
Okay, I see.
Okay, so 125 year, non-renewable, September 28th, and PAR is there to carefully read. So there's this proposal is quite a bit different than the R15. The R15 proposals are like the R1s. They're a 12-page research strategy. For the Sure Awards, both of them, the research strategy section is a maximum of 6 pages, not much. And in addition, within that 6 pages, you're going to have a paragraph or 2 or more that it has a very formal student involvement plan that is encouraged in R15s, but is not a required separate section. So in terms of, so really you probably got 5 to 5.5 to get all, your significance, innovation, approach, and so forth. So it's extremely narrowed down from what the R15 is. And part of that student involvement plan is like how you're going to recruit students. And particularly you want to show, how are you going to solicit and recruit students from underrepresented groups, what your strategy is to involve them, how they're going to be trained in conducting research. And again, they expect these students to be, be part of the team that can execute and help design and report and ideally present and publish. And as you'll see, part of the progress report, each year is to indicate what those students are doing, how many got in graduate school, how many papers they were involved in, publications, and so forth. So the student involvement plan is critical. Now, in addition to the research strategy plan, there's 4 for the Sure First, 4 required attachments, separate documents. I don't know that they have a page limit. One of them is an institutional letter, which is the institution's plan on how they're going to build research capacity and research excellence. And I'll give you a little more detail on that a little later. So that's a separate, probably 1 or 2 page letter. So it's going to come from a provost or VPR or somebody says, what is the institution's strategy to develop research capacity, and probably particularly as related to undergraduate research. Then you have to have an institutional letter, more likely come from a chair or dean, of how they're going to support the PI's research career development. Then the PI has to have an attachment about what their research enhancement plan or their plan for how this grant would help them develop an independent research laboratory and future funding. And then just a statement of what your prior, current, and pending support might be. I'll talk about these letters and a research enhancement plan a little bit more shortly. Okay, so this is, well, I must have gone backwards somehow. Yeah, there it is. Okay. No, I don't know why I'm going. So these are the Sure Awards, not the Sure First, but I must have gone too far. Okay, the Sure Awards. The Sure Awards are designed for individuals PIs who have previously had who served as a PI on an externally funded grant. So if you previously had an NIH grant or an NSF or any other externally funded grant, you cannot apply for the Sure First, but you are eligible to apply for the Sure awards. Now, the second part of that is not only, you must have been funded in the past as a PI on an external grant, but at the time you apply, you cannot currently be funded. So you cannot have an active external grant, an active NIH grant. And that includes no cost extensions. So your grant, if you've had an NIH grant in the past, which you should, that grant's got to be totally done before you're eligible to apply.
That's for when you submit the application or for when this grant would start?
When you submit the application.
That's funky.
Yeah, I know, it's real funky. And so the tricky part is you can't have one pending either. So in other words, you can submit, an R15 in June, and while it's pending, submit the R16. Well, actually, you'll see the date here is May. Again, it's once a year in May. But at any rate, if you submit an R15, you're allowed to submit an R16 once you get the summary statements back. But if you have not got the summary statements back, then you cannot submit the R16. So there is a way to plan it probably. You could probably submit in October next year for an R15 with the idea if you didn't get it, come back for the R16 next May. But you definitely wouldn't want to do it in February, kind of thing. But yeah, so because you can't have overlapping grants submissions. So you couldn't take your R15 and submit it for an R01 basically at the same time while it's still in the system. And they define in the system as having your summary sheets back. But that's important. Now, on the Sure First Award, you are allowed to apply for Sure grants during the final year or no cost extension of your Sure First Award. Because that, I said the Sure First are non-renewable, but they expect you to apply for a Sure grant, and you are allowed to do that. Go ahead and apply during the last funding year, but not for any other grant. So like the Sure First, again, undergraduate students are required to be involved. And interestingly, it's pointed out to me, this grant does not require a minimum of 6 person months to devote to the project. I haven't got a clue why. I guess they think of you guys as established investigators have already figured it out, whereas the younger first-time investigators need more time to devote for the research. We have always pushed for the R15s that you need at least 6 person months to be effective, particularly at the PUIs where we have 12 credit hour teaching loads, Kaesung has an advantage. You don't have a 12-hour teaching load per semester, probably 6 or 9.
I would say somewhere between 9 and 12.
Really?
I would say,
A year or semester?
oh, year.
Oh, we're talking semester.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm taking advantage of the Cape Award, actually.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, I would still recommend that you do 6 person months. Again, clinical trials not allowed. Unlike the Sure First, these are limited to 100,000 a year, but still for 4 years, which is an advantage over the R15s. And competitive renewals are allowed. And again, you can apply for a renewal in the last year of your Sure Award. So So you don't have to let it run out before you can apply again. Again, once a year deadline, and that's coming up on May 26th this year. And there's the PAR number, so you guys can dive into the details a little bit. So the required components of the SURE are basically the same as the SURE First, except the PI doesn't have to have a career development plan. You still have to have the institutional strategic plan and a support from chair or dean, how they're going to support your career development and prior, current, and pending support. So that institutional letter, the strategic plan for building research capacity, that letter has to come from provost, president, VPR, or a senior official. It's got to describe the institution's strategic plan for the development of research capacity and research excellence in that plan. And I think it should certainly talk about the importance of undergraduate research and what the university is doing to support that. And the institution's vision and commitment to develop and sustain an environment that values and rewards research, and how this research will support the educational mission of the institution. So this may be something that maybe you already have. I mean, we do require all Cambrian partner institutions, each renewal, to write a support letter of commitment that probably has some of these items in it. But if you got faculty to your institution that may be interested in going after these awards, this may be something the lead faculty might want to get with their VPR or dean or others and start working on this document in advance, because it could be used in, however many R16s that might go in. But I certainly wouldn't wait to the last minute to get this particular thing going. Plus, I assume, all the extra information required in an R15 under other resources, a lot of that information we have that you could use in this strategic plan, because most time we cite the university's commitment to research, what they've done for undergraduate research, how they support faculty with intramural programs, building new labs, whatever. So I think all the information's there, may need to be put in a different format. But again, like I say, if you know of people that might be going in for this in May or September, this letter maybe wanted to start on that pretty now. It'll be pretty much, I'd say, boilerplate. Once you get it done, we'll be able to use it and tweak it for a long time. The institutional letter, the chair, dean, they just give something again along the lines that we require that says, yes, indeed, we will support, the release time or the research effort for the PI on the proposed project will be provided, even if paid for, and to let them know, what additional support, you might provide. Maybe we could provide support for additional undergraduate students to work in the lab, or perhaps support for undergraduate students to present at conferences, the typical stuff that we do. And we have a similar letter, support letter that we put in R15 grants, but this is required as an attachment. And the final one is from the PI. You got to write, this is for SURE First only, not the SURE awards. But if you're going after your first external grant, you got to describe in detail how your objectives for career enhancement and how the award will improve your research productivity, how you'll devote your time. Again, the participation of your mentor and collaborators, consultant, and how they will help you in terms of gathering data, increase productivity, and develop future grant proposals. Many of these things are the same things that we require for our K-Brink grants. And we expect, you know, from, and a lot of the same information goes into the R15 other resources, just in a little different format. Also, as part of this, again, here's describe your mentor's research qualifications, track record, the mentor's role, how you'll interact on the project. I mean, if you have scheduled meetings, I mean, I think it always helped Katie Carlson that she always put in travel funds for once a year to go meet with her mentor for 3 or 4 days. And I think Katie also included funding, if I recall, Katie, some small percent for the mentors. But again, I mean, I think maybe including a small stipend kind of indicates that they're serious about the job or about the role. Again, in this case, which we like to see in our grants, but you can include it here instead of in the research strategy, some specific milestones and timelines, not only for research projects, but when you expect to have grants, publications out, and when you would expect to maybe submit other grant proposals. So in a nutshell, those are the basic 3 or 4 additional attachments that you're required. Clearly, this is a way shorter proposal. I mean, it sounds good to me, 6 pages, but on the other hand, I wasn't particularly happy when NIH switched from 25 pages to 12-page research strategy. I was like, how am I possibly gonna get all this detailed information in and cover all the bases? And now you do it with 6 pages. So you clearly have to be pretty succinct in doing that. Unfortunately, I've looked up data. The earliest grants applied for these programs were the Sure First last May. And the best I could tell, no awards have been made yet. So we don't have any funding success data on these. I do know that NIGMS, at least the last I heard, was going to put in around $48 million into this program. For comparison, last year, there was about 118 million put into the R15 program. But again, we have no idea how many applications will be there. I think this Pell Grant thing will eliminate quite a few schools that we compete against in the R15 program, because there's some actually PhD level schools and private schools that aren't going to be eligible with this Pell Grant requirement. So that may eliminate a lot. Also, eliminating clinical trials, that may reduce the pool even further. So I'm hopeful that the success rate will be decent. For R15s last year, I think it got up to, for 2020, it got up to like 22%, which, you know, has been a little higher than normal. So hopefully these grants will be in 25% range or something like that. So I don't know, it looks like a really good opportunity, and they really seem to be going after, for the Sure grants, that people who have had this history of being funded, like with R15s or other grants, who have a track record of mentoring students and doing well with them, that are currently not funded. So I'm hopeful that, you know, we have a few people in that category that this may be right up and maybe a really advantage for them, some of them that be eligible for that kind of thing. Any other questions related to this?
I have a question about the study section for R16. Who's going to review R16 proposal? Is there a specific study section or is it very similar to R15? At the same time, the criteria is like a standard criteria, like innovation, significance, PI, environment, all those things.
I think they will definitely use the same significance, innovation, and approach, that part of it. I knew the answer to your review question, but I'm blocking on it right now. For some reason, and I'll have to double check this, I was thinking at NIGMS, we're going to set up special separate review committees for the R16, but I'm going to have to double check that. I just don't remember the answer to that question. But I will follow up and try to get some word out related to that. I would suspect that they would not be funded in regular groups with R15s and R01. I don't hope not. In fact, I was kind of thinking that NIGMS will set those up as special review groups, no matter what institute they go to. But I will find out.
Okay, thanks.
I see there's a YouTube presentation.
Yep, that might actually mention it. That's a really informative presentation because they kind of go over the history of how these develop and what the purpose of them.
Here, I'll,
I think that's a link I put on hold.
okay, do you have that link? I can put it in chat if,
Yeah, let me go backwards. Hold on, go backwards here.
Bruce, while you're looking for that, I just looked at the website for the announcement. And it said that NIJMS will convene groups for review. So it sounds like they're gonna
good.
put their own review group together.
Okay, I thought
I had
I,
the same question as Dae-Sung, and although they use the term plural groups, they kind of leave it a little bit vague there, but it sounds like it'll be a NIGMS type group.
I see.
well,
Yeah.
I thought, didn't I have a,
I stuck it in chat just in case.
oh, did you find it?
Yeah, well, I just,
Oh,
because I was trying to look up the
Oh, there
review
you
groups.
go.
I was trying to see if I could get an answer and I saw oh, there it is. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, 1.5 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of that, it's a shorter presentation, but they recorded all the question answer period.
Oh, okay.
It was pretty helpful, actually, because a lot of people asked questions that I actually had. But again, I forgot the lady's name, but she's very, very helpful. And when I talked to her, she was happy to chat about the program and stuff, and certainly was encouraging for Kentucky PIs to apply for these grants.
Bruce, was that somebody with NIGMS?
Yep, and
Was it Irina Krasnova?
yeah, that's her, Irina. She's awesome. Yep.
Yeah, she used to be, I think she's associated with the SCORE program. I've reviewed some grants for them. I don't
Right.
really know her personally, but I'm sure she sat in on some review sessions where I was at, so.
Well, that makes sense because it's like I say, this program replaced the SCORE programs. And then they phased out. So,
Just one other comment. I'm looking at that web page. It looks like if the reviews went in last May, they don't get funded through till October of this year. So that may be one of the reasons why you're not seeing grants, unless you know something I don't. But
oh,
if
I
they haven't
saw,
made a decision yet, it maybe they're still sitting on some of those.
yeah, no, I did see that. I didn't think it was October. I thought it was July, but it's even October, well, a year and 1 month in advance.
So if you apply in May, you'll get, the funding will come through in April of the following year.
Okay, that's this April.
So it's 11 months. Yeah. So I'm just saying, if you looked up
Oh,
from
for the
last
same-
year's share grants. If there's nothing funded, it may be that just hasn't come through the plumbing yet.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. So hopefully by the summer we'll see some.
Yeah, I hope that's the case.
What do you think, Mark? You thinking the shear grant is made?
I'm gonna take the 5th
I
right
don't
now.
want, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything.
I've actually emailed with Irina about a little bit, so it was a while back. But we'll see what happens.
Okay, if no other questions, I'm gonna stop recording.